Tired of the toxic level of polarization in the United States? Interested in talking with people whose perspective differs from your own in ways that stay constructive? We invite you to join us for a year focused on creating a culture of conversation rather than division. The Padno Sirosik Center for Civil Discourse, Kauffman Interfaith Institute, Hauenstein Center for Presidential Studies, and WGVU Public Media are pleased to partner for Talking Together, strengthening our communities through conversation, a dialogue initiative aimed at interrupting polarization and investing in the principles of civil discourse and respectful conversation. The aim is to assist community members engaging in conversation with one another across differences in perspective, identity, and life experiences. Talking the talk and walking the walk. Today we focus on creating positive social change through honest and authentic conversation. Often that means sharing power, navigating dynamics of power and privilege. Here to discuss strategies for collaborating across differences and listening to understand are Kendra Avila, Housing Manager, AYA Youth Collective. Meg Durr is Executive Director of Refugee Education Center working with Freedom Flight. Reverend Lynette Sparks is pastor at Westminster Presbyterian Church working with Together West Michigan. And Ned Andre is project coordinator with Community Collaboration on Climate Change, also known as C4. Thank you all for being here. This is an interesting conversation because we're talking about social change, but there is so much that goes on in the nonprofit sector and how everybody works together. We talked about power dynamics. We're going to get into voice and youth voice. So I think we might want to start off here with something that Ned calls community agreements.
That's right. Thanks for having us all here. I'm with C4, the Community Collaboration on Climate Change. We're a BIPOC organization, so we're trying to bring to the table Black, Indigenous, people of color, so Asians, Latinos, and we've actually expanded into all the marginalized communities. We're looking for youth, we're looking for the disabled, the homeless, the elderly, people who have been excluded from the tables of power and decision making. And what we found is that when you bring the BIPOC community together, even though all of them have faced some traumas and injustices in society, their issues are different. And one group may want to lift up their issue versus a different issue. And so we've determined that we need a set of community agreements so that we can talk together in a peaceable and civil way. So I won't list them all, but we say things like be authentic, speak your own truth, because you don't have to try to put on a face for us for what you want to say or what you think I want to hear you say, just be authentic. We try to speak to understand and then speak to explain. We want to be respectful of all the members at the table. And so there's a whole host of community agreements, but number one at the end would be climate justice work is difficult. So even if you're tired, it's okay. It's okay to be tired. Justice work doesn't happen overnight. Just keep going.
There is the element of trust, right? Because we talk about speaking authentically, but there are people who still are fearful of maybe revealing their origin story or whatever it might be and are fearful of pushback, but really it's that authenticity that perhaps moves the needle a little bit more and gets things moving in the right direction.
Yeah, I would say I work, the executive director of Refugee Education Center. We're focused on helping refugee kids in their academic and social emotional success, but we're also part of a large organization called Freedom Flight, which has been around since the 1980s, and it's made up of many organizations in our community who are focused on helping refugees resettle well in this community, and we resettle a lot of refugees here in West Michigan. And I would say in our organization, in this collaborative, you almost have to set aside sometimes your own agenda, a little bit like Ned was talking about, because we're all trying to solve the same problem. We're a collaboration. Freedom Flight's not doing the service provision, but we're a group of folks who are providing service, and we're coming together to talk about systems issues. And we're coming together to talk about how can our community be prepared to welcome refugees? How can we be a welcoming community? Where are the gaps? Where are the challenges? And if we're not willing to put aside things that there might be competitors in the group or other things like that, we can't solve this problem. So I think that kind of goes to that idea of coming together in an authentic way, realizing we're all having to have a shared vision, and you just have to be humble in that space. Also including the voice of refugee people so that we know what they need. And so it's really a matter of listening well and being able to hear and to respond to the true need.
You mentioned competitor, but there's this element of collaboration. So explain, is that the bridge building? Explain to me how that works when you're competing, and yet you really need to collaborate if you want to create that desired change.
I think that's a good segue, a good question as well, is because we talk about the nonprofit sector and then we talk about philanthropy, and funding streams often dictate sometimes the why behind the projects that exist in our communities. And so the way that I would say that when you're talking about applying for grants, when you're talking about collaboration, I think collaboration is a buzzword as well. Mm-hmm. And it goes back to what Ned was saying as well too, is like authenticity, at least in the realm of where I work, has to do with youth voice and youth choice. Mm-hmm. And so incorporating that into the philanthropy side of things, where you're trying to, when you're talking with your development team as a program manager, or as myself as the housing manager, talking about how we need to build in youth voice and youth choice into the grants that we're applying, mm-hmm. into the boards that are being led, including youth voice and including youth voice and choice at all levels within the organization that you're working at and within the community.
But I know you've been doing this for quite some time, and you're not from Grand Rapids, but you've worked in this sector for so long. What have you seen over time? And when we talk about conversation and bringing people together and having those honest dialogues?
Yeah, I came from Rochester, New York, which deals with very similar problems in a similar sized city. And, there too, I've seen multiple times where cities, communities are very philanthropic, but philanthropy and justice are two very different things. And philanthropy can often be anti-democratic, if you will, in that whoever has the money, whoever has the funding stream dictates what happens. And usually it lasts for a 3-year grant period and then moving on to something new. But every place that philanthropic organizations are moving to more of a justice model, which helps, gives entities. I know, Ned, you've shared a story about your own organization where the money is given and the folks who are benefiting from the money get to choose how it's being used. Okay, that leads to justice, and that's a really positive model of philanthropy. So we have many, many folks who are so generous, and to be able to put those together would just be amazingly powerful.
And that's working with C4. So what is that secret sauce? What has been missing? And how does communicating play into its success?
I think if you go back to the George Floyd moment that this entire nation had, I think there was a real shift in philanthropy. The philanthropic sector saw that they were helicoptering over a lot of problems and a lot of services, a lot of money, but change, the root causes weren't being addressed. And so there was a shift, and C4 was kind of a benefactor of that shift, where we said, we're going to resource the frontline communities. Instead of helicoptering over top and sprinkling money from above, we're going to give the money to the folks that are on the front line. So that's what C4 has been doing. We've got currently 14 community ambassadors. They're all over the city of Grand Rapids, currently in a leadership development for climate justice advocacy. And as they now are finishing their program, then they will be resourced with a $5,000 mini grant. They'll go out their own front door, and in their authentic voice, respecting their autonomy, respecting their agency, they will go into their hyper-local community. Could be 5 neighbors, could be 10 neighbors. Maybe they have the capacity to do 40 neighbors. But whatever capacity they have, they build the program, and they and their neighbors say, here's what we're going to do in this neighborhood with the money that you've given us. So they might peel up a parking lot, plant trees, do a community garden, educate kids. We're not going to dictate to them what they do. We will respect their agency.
And when you empower people in that way, how does that impact other, I guess, parts of our society? How does that spread? How does that grow? What have we seen where that works? And we see a greater change than just a finite footprint.
I think that's a very, very good question. And I would say that something similar to what you do around the grants, we are finding that young people who are experiencing housing instability, they're often able to resolve some of the things that they may need while they're experiencing housing instability. You talk about homelessness as just not having a house, but also what plays a part in that is needing access to health care, needing access to a vehicle that you're able to get to your job, like all of these things built up towards your own stability. And so we have established a direct cash transfer program within our organization that allows for young people to apply for a direct cash transfer to them. And they'll tell us why they may want this funding. And then they'll work with someone who does case management. And so they're working towards their goals, but they're also given the funding that they need to find the stability. And again, it goes back to youth voice and youth choice. Young people know what they need, and often they know more than we give them credit for. And I can tell you that from my own experience talking with young people every single day, they want to lead and they have the knowledge themselves, I think oftentimes, to build the programming that they need to resolve their instability.
They want to show me how to use my cell phone most of the time. But you used a phrase earlier. We were in the green room. What was it? Adulting? What did you call it?
Oh, adultism.
Adultism.
And so that is often the fact where a person will, an older person who has been an adult for a long time, will often look down on the perspectives of young people. And we often say in community and just in our own family, sometimes we believe that our elders have experience, and they do, and they're valid, and it's important to draw, but intergenerational conversations I think are incredibly important as well. And hearing the perspectives of young people from how they're living their lives, like I'm not going to say how old I am, but I remember when there was no internet. And so the way that young people like communicate with each other, the way that they talk to each other, and some of the goals that they have are very different from what like even I have. I'm looking forward to do with my goals I had when I was their age. And so hearing from them their own experiences and what life looks like to them as a young person is incredibly important as well.
I know the focus is talking together, but there is this idea of listening and listening to understand and the value in this. Where have you seen this when oftentimes we think we know and really we need to reverse the process and listen? Where have you seen the greatest change in your experiences?
So I can talk a little bit about that with Freedom Flight. We recently, this past October, had a first ever 3-day conference hosted by the state of Michigan, where many of the organizations that are serving folks, refugee background, new refugees to the community, came together to talk about what we're doing. And we split into different groups. We talked about healthcare, education, housing, and we had not done that before. We did a lot of talking, but we did a lot of listening. And what we decided in that meeting, in that conference, was that actually the agencies that are doing the housing and the healthcare and the education need to also be at the table, because we were the service providers. We were sort of the navigators of those services. We were the resettlement agencies or the education agencies, but we were not doing the housing. We were not serving the healthcare needs of the folks that we were serving. So there's been a second retreat or conference with those agencies coming to the table. And I think that this is going to really move the needle in a way that we haven't seen before, because we're able to listen to them and their challenges. We get frustrated with them at times because we can't find housing, or other, vaccine opportunities are backed up at the health department or whatever. But coming together and understanding their challenges, them understanding what we need, I really believe is going to make a big difference. We'll see, fingers crossed. We have it, the next iteration of this is for all of us to be together in the same room. And so I think, getting everyone together in the same room sometimes is magic. It's really hard to do. It takes a lot of listening, but we'll see. It's exciting to think about.
And at Together West Michigan, one of the tools that we use is house meetings. And so as an organization that's comprised of institutions, and we're broad-based, so we're first relationship-based, and then as the community gets together, determines what issues to work on. But in house meetings, we'll bring together ordinary folks from any place to talk about the stresses and problems that they are facing in their lives, and the themes that will come up, and then we'll have hundreds of them throughout the city across demographics. And the themes that arise over and over again, what we also find is as people share their stories, and then we find leaders from within those meetings who are experiencing the issues, because they are the experts in what is going on. And that is a very powerful tool that Together West Michigan uses. Not the only tool, but certainly a really good and important one.
And that listening, I would imagine, that helps to build that collaboration. But I think, Ned, you might have, somebody here said that collaboration can be messy from time to time.
Yes.
I think we all believe that.
It is, but to the point you just made, I was really diving deep and studying climate justice issues, and one of the resources that I was looking at said one of the greatest things that any of us can do in any field whenever justice is at the core is to build an authentic relationship with the people that you're serving, to partner with them, to collaborate with them. So the old model of, hey, we who have are gonna set up a booth and we're gonna service you as you come by, and we're gonna wave and we're gonna smile, and then we're gonna go home to our privileged lives. That model is shifted to house meeting, where you say, come to my home, or can I come to your home? Can I build an authentic and ongoing relationship? It's not a single point of contact. You have a drop-in center that these folks are living there. So there's this ongoing engagement. And then once you get past your philanthropic spiel or your elevator pitch, then what do you say? Then it's, hey, I'm a real person too. Can I tell you about some of the troubles that I'm having? And then I become a human being, they become a human being. And if you can build that, if we can get past the fear that media and all the otherism that goes on, where you can't trust these people, watch out for those people. And if we can get past that fear and just see each other human being to human being, that goes a long way.
So there is this human instinct, for lack of a better term, which is, I feel like I've done my good deed. Right. Mm-hmm. But I've done my good deed, and now I get to go back to my life or whatever it is, and I've checked the box. Is that?
That's it.
That's.
Yep, we got to get past checking that box, and we have to build that authentic. So employing some of these folks that come into your agency to receive services, can you now bring them on board? Can you contract with them? Can you give them a position of authority? Can you do a leadership or a workforce development training right in your building? So they. One of my ambassadors told a story that was incredible to me, that we did some work, C4 did some work with housing, with HUD, Housing and Urban Development, and then we had an opportunity to bring some of the ambassadors in on a homeless outreach task force, and he went down to Human Resources, and instead of standing in line to receive food stamps or SNAP or whatever program, they greeted him at the door and they said, hey, come on back. And they opened a door that he didn't even see before, and he was taken into the back, and suddenly he was treated as an equal. And just the joy that he felt, it was incredible to him that everybody behind the counters, their whole demeanor had changed. He's not just one of these people receiving services, he was at the table. So open the door, invite people in and talk to them.
That's the trust part, right? Is that a cornerstone of everything that we're talking about here, is trusting and believing and understanding where people come from, their origin story? Is that what opens the doors to really making everything happen?
You quoted it earlier, last week, I believe, Adrienne Maree Brown, moving at the speed of trust. That is the most important in my work, I believe. You're not able to make a concentrated change or have influence over someone who, or them have influence over you, unless you have a trust. And I believe that is the most important thing when you're doing community work with people who are experiencing housing instability and also colleagues. Moving at the speed of trust, because once you build a relationship with someone, the way that you view them shifts greatly, as you just described, Ned.
Yeah, I think there's a tension, right, in trust. There's the tension of the need to earn trust. So I, as an individual, need to prove myself trustworthy to you or to you or to you. And the tension of being willing to give that trust. So I can't speak for others, but is that tension? And I think in all these relationships, part of that messiness is being willing to live with the tension long enough to break through it and find that next step together.
Yeah, that's so powerful what you're saying in that. Think about the relationship you have with your children. Do your children, are they perfect human beings, or do they make some mistakes and then make some mistakes again and the mistakes again? And we live in a society where those who often have a one and done mentality. We're going to trust and verify. If you make one mistake, it's done. And as human beings, we all make mistakes. And so we can't have a fragile trust. The fragility of trust, it's not going to work. We have to have a robust and resilient sense of trust that, hey, I'm going to make mistakes, you're going to make mistakes. So one of the things that we've done is we've moved into, the United States of America, we love the adversarial system for the legal system. We're going to get a judge who's going to say who's right and who's wrong. And we've moved into a restorative practice model, seeing things from a trauma-informed lens. So we've done some work with Trauma-Informed Philanthropy Consulting. They've given us a restorative practice model. And it's not about who's right or wrong. It's what part did you play? What part did I play? What was our goal? How can we get there together? How can we restore relationship versus saying I'm right and you're wrong?
And you're empowering people and you're providing leadership, right? If it's the one and done, we get nowhere, but it's trusting and empowering people to bring that positive change. Is that what you all see when that happens?
And I think assuming positive intent, like I think a little bit about, making the assumption that the other has positive intent. There is a lot of risk in moving into a trustworthy relationship. And I see that playing out in the work that we do as well.
You have to be willing to be vulnerable. And that's a part of building trust, in my opinion.
Agreed.
Trust, right? We have to trust each other to move forward. So trust-based philanthropy, what does that mean?
It's trauma-informed philanthropy. We have a consultant, Susan Clark. She's been doing some work with our organization because we recognize even C4, even though you've brought all these justice warriors together, we're a BIPOC organization. And so I having a lot of experience in the social science field, studying Native American tribes, thinking, hey, I have a lot of knowledge about Native Americans, but it's book knowledge. And I've said some things and done some things where guess what? I still didn't really understand their worldview. We were down at the My Healthy Climate Conference last week, and we were listening to tribal leaders, and they had a description of the difference between ownership and living in relationship. When they went out looking for fish, they were wading into the water and preparing good habitat for the fish long before the fish arrived. Then when the fish come and they catch only as many fish as they needed, they sing for the fish, they dance for the fish, they pray for the fish. And to hear him reveal that part of their worldview was so powerful to me, because book knowledge is one thing, but building a relationship with someone and then getting to truly understand them takes it to the next level.
And that's what Talking Together is all about. I'd like to thank all of you for being here. Kendra Avila, Housing Manager, AYA Youth Collective. Thank you so much. Meg Durr, Executive Director, Refugee Education Center. Reverend Lynette Sparks, Westminster Presbyterian Church. And Ned Andre, Project Coordinator, C4. Thank you all so much for being here. Great conversation. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us. We'll see you again soon.
Love is more than just a rush of feeling. Love is sweet labor. It's fierce and bloody, imperfect, demanding. It's a choice we make again and again. So what might happen if we take a little bit of that way of loving out into the world? What if we express that kind of love for others, for even our opponents, and for ourselves, who we too often neglect?
What does a good environment look like? What does a nice house look like? Even though the signs are not there, we are still living in the aftermath and the momentum of those signs from years ago. And so we have to accept the reality of that truth. We have to say, okay, it's important for me to understand these things, learn new stuff, but what am I learning it for?
It was wonderful to see so many people coming out, to see so many students out celebrating that day by doing service for their community and for their brothers and sisters, but then also to cap that day off with conversation about how do we give back, how do we serve, how do we move forward, and what are the values and messages of Dr. King that still apply to today.